Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pints and Politics. We're outside today, and it's beautiful out, right, Mike?
Huh,
Absolute.
absolutely gorgeous.
Oh yeah, BEA beautiful. And we're outside. We're at Beck's Burger Bar and Grill in Staples, Minnesota. Great place to get a burger. I got chicken wrap. But
I had a jalapeno burger, which was awesome with Parmesan fries.
yeah, they're
They were
pretty
good.
good.
There goes my diet. It's an awesome burger. Yeah. And first time I've ever been here at Beck's. Service was good. Food was good.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. And it's great. So if you're ever up in Staples, stop in at Beck's.
yeah. You were already in town today, weren't you?
Well, I had two events go on today. One of them was with one group that mental health issues. They do peer-to-peer service. Don't know that I can mention their name, but
Oh, yeah.
because they're a nonprofit, I guess
Actually,
if I had the okay that I would. But
yeah.
before that was a daycare roundtable dealing with daycare issues in one of the communities out here in Long Prairie. So we're just going to delve into that.
Yeah. So what's going on with daycare?
So actually, this is an issue not just in Greater Minnesota, but it does hit us pretty hard.
Pretty hard because we just passed legislation last year, or
There was
within the last year.
There was legislation that would put more regulation on daycare, and what that's done already has had a negative effect. Now that legislation is not gonna. They pushed its start date back from 2025 to 2026, but we've already seen daycares that say we're not going to be able to meet these standards, and they're shutting down. And that's exactly what happened with this facility. They were taking care of about 38 kids, and they said we just cannot meet regulations. So in a small community of 4,000 people, a daycare like that going out of business is
It's a big deal.
devastating. Absolutely. But this came up in committee, actually.
Did it?
We had a committee meeting, and it was one of the joint committees that we met, and it was child care and economic development. And the whole premise of that was child care, daycare. And I had to do a little research. So if we have daycare shortages, why do we have daycare shortages?
Yeah, why do we? Because I know that Tim Walz, and granted, this is, he's busy running for vice president, but he was talking about how he was going to make childcare affordable and accessible to everyone.
And with $19.5 billion surplus,
Yep.
we should have been able to figure something out, I would assume. But we didn't. But you got to look into the history as to why this happened. And I've spoke about this many times, different events. Why do we have a daycare shortage? And it really goes back to about, I think it was 2011, 2012. Mark Dayton was governor.
Okay.
They wanted to unionize daycares. So daycares all across the state, they wanted to make them all union. That didn't happen.
Yeah.
And it seems like there was a retaliation that said, if you're not going to unionize, we're going to regulate you until you're out of business. And therefore, what's the next option then for daycare? It's usually in facilities like a school.
Okay.
Government-run daycare.
I feel like that's the goal.
And
And, okay, so Mike.
that's not even a conspiracy theory. That is just a
Well,
fact.
this goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks, and I know I hate to bring it up,
Here we go into that history again.
but Socrates, he had if you read, well, actually, I guess Plato wrote the book, but it's Republic. Plato's Republic has a whole section on how should the raising of children and the role of women and the family should be in the perfect, quote unquote, perfect society, utopia, whatever you want to call it. And in this, that parents actually are removed from parenting. They actually don't even know. The children is not designed to know who the parents are because they're supposed to be agents of the state, of the people in charge, the bureaucracy, if you would. And the way it is they would have the parents to go through some mating ritual where they're selected for whatever reason. And then they would have the kid, and then the kid is taken and essentially raised by the government for his entire life.
We had a quote about that not too long ago. I think it was with Professor Nick.
Yep. Smart guy.
Give your children, put your children in Caesar schools Don't be surprised when they come out as Romans.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. Man, that was good.
Yep. I always get that quote wrong, but it's very true. So, who is the best to nurture, develop, um, foster the growth in the child?
Well, that
I
depends.
believe.
Do you want the actual answer or do you want the political answer from the state?
Well, can I give you my opinion?
Yeah.
And you can give me yours. I think the parents. The parents should decide what is best for their children. Now, there's some parents who want to have the career. They want to have the job. They want to have whatever it is out of life that they want to have, and are willing and okay with daycare, whatever those options are. I'm not faulting that. I firmly believe that the parents decide what is best for their kids. If they want to fit that in, now I think that a family should take care of their children.
Yep.
We've been lucky enough that with our business and with our family, we have had to use daycare only with our oldest child when we live in St. Cloud.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
That's not bad.
otherwise, we've had family, friends, people work together to help take care of their kids. And it reciprocates, you help me, I help you, works out. But for the state to run daycare, that to me is kind of a scary thing.
I don't trust it. Just on my head, I don't trust it. Maybe that's because I don't really trust the government that much, especially a government that's so far removed from the people. Because as we like to say, the best and most effective government is the one closest to them.
Closest to the me.
But the state, obviously, they do because they want more control, they want more power, as we've seen with all this new laws and new regulations, new bureaucracies coming in. You see this, dare I say, bloated government, right? And raising the kid, that's a benefit to them in a lot of ways. And and I guess and again, I'm going to give my opinion on this, who should raise the kids. Sure. And I suppose I don't treat it like an opinion, more as a fact, is that the parents, it's like more of a duty to raise your kids. So I guess it is my opinion, but I'm very staunch on that. You should be there and raise your kids. I'm not opposed to daycare, but it should be parents' choice, and they should kind of like how, I don't know if choosing schools is like this, but it was back in the day when I was going to school. Like, you'd meet your teachers, and then you could talk about them about these things, tell them what you want to see from them about how your kid is being educated. And so, really, the parents' value should be reflected in whomever, be it them or somebody else, raising their child.
You used an interesting word there, values.
Oh, yeah.
Values is something very interesting, isn't it? Who is going to instill them in your children? Is it going to be you? Or is it going to be the state? Now, I think that those values should come from the parents, because we all do have some different opinions on values and virtues and so forth. And we want our kids to have the same opportunities, upbringing. That's why we bring them to churches. That's why we bring them to different social events. What the parents are into is usually what they teach their children. Those are shared values. Yep. And usually in a community, especially a small community, it is really shared values.
Yeah. And actually, a little fun fact while we're on the topic of who should raise the kids. I was talking to an old lady last week.
My age or older?
Older.
Oh, okay.
Probably about maybe your mom's age.
Okay.
And back in the day, she had a sister who was a live-in nanny for some house.
Oh.
We used to have live-in nannies where like the person would come and actually live with you and help you raise the kid. And so you'd give them free housing and free food and maybe some money. And in turn, they would help you raise the kids. It'd be like...
I think, and I haven't done a deep dive into that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times when there was nannies involved, it was at a different social class.
Oh, this was not wealth. It's not a wealthy class. These were farmers.
Okay. Now, there was, remembering some of the history, is if you had a family member that wasn't married,
yeah,
an aunt, whatever, who would a lot of times come and live with a family, to help out.
Yeah, I could see
quite
that.
Often.
Yeah.
There was people who just didn't get married for whatever reason.
Yeah.
And they would come and help raise the kids, live with a family.
Yeah.
Was that necessarily a nanny, though?
Oh, the person was a live-in nanny is what I heard.
But was it for family or for...
It was for, like, the neighbors. It was not family.
Okay.
Yeah, so that happened, and there's history of men doing something similar because Jack Daniels, the famous whiskey maker, he actually went and moved over to the farm of some priest and learned how to make whiskey on his farm. So he was a farmhand and a whiskey maker, and then he started
upbringing.
Yeah, and so then he actually learned it from the priest's slave. Don't know how that works out, but so he learned it from him because he was the master distiller for the priest. And then when the priest stopped making whiskey because of the temperance movement, thank you. He had to give that up. So Jack Daniels took over the still and started the Jack Daniels distillery, and he actually freed the slave named Nearest Green, or after he was freed, made him his master distiller. So the first master distiller for Jack Daniels was a freed black man.
Wow.
Fun fact. And he had moved from his house, because he was poor, to work for a priest at a farm with a slave.
Interesting. Yeah. I would have thought the temperance, and I'm thinking of the prohibition, not temperance, but temperance was actually...
temperance was it was the lead up to prohibition.
Yes.
Yeah.
So just to make it clear, because at first I was thinking, 1900s, but when did
this would be like late 1860s, early 1870s?
That have to have been before that, because we already had a Civil War by 60.
Yeah, so he was freed after the Civil War, but then he hired him.
Have to have been before the Civil War.
Yeah, no, he learned before, yes, but then he hired him to be his master distiller.
Oh, after the Civil War.
After, yes.
Gotcha. I'll have to look that up.
Oh, it's really interesting history, and I think the quote for the priest to stop making whiskey was, you either get to make the spirit or teach the spirit. You can't do both.
I think I've heard that before.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it's a little fun fact, but anyway, so there were instances from probably all levels of wealth of having a live-in nanny helping you raise your kids, and when you do that, the person raising the kid, be it you, a nanny, daycare, they still get to see those values that you have.
Right.
Yeah.
So going back to why there's a daycare shortage. That's really what this whole issue is about.
Yep.
And I talked about the unionization or attempted unionization before. But what we've seen since then is overregulation.
Mm-hmm.
And you're limited to how many kids you can watch at certain ages. And now you have to have, for some kids, you have to have a teaching degree. So this is all added to the cost. And right now, if I recall the numbers correctly, we are the 6th most expensive state when it comes to daycare.
Mm-hmm.
So it works out to, I think it was 12 to, if you have 2 kids, it's about $20,000 for daycare. Now, who can afford
Holy crap, 20,000?
Right.
Shoot. You can just hire the 12-year-old neighbor girl to raise them for like $20 a night.
I don't even know if you can do that anymore.
Oh my goodness.
Because if it's not a family member, then they have to be certified and everything else. And if it's overnight, there's different stipulations. So there's a whole lot of things that go into this. And what's really happened is we've overregulated this industry. Because of it, we've lost 50% of the daycares out in greater Minnesota.
50%.
Yes.
That's not a good sign.
That's not a good sign. So really look at the problem. Why do we have a daycare shortage? Overregulation. How do we get out of this? It's not by creating different alternatives necessarily for daycare. Let's take the regulations that weren't effective, that don't work for every situation, that aren't going to work in greater Minnesota, and let's let the market take care of things, because government will screw it up every chance they get. What was really interesting in that conversation today was there was a couple schools who've been trying daycare in the schools. And they're finding the exact same issues that were happening in the private sector. Can't find enough staff, and it's losing money.
So that just makes it more expensive, meaning people can't afford it, so they're going to have less, then they need to charge more because they can't afford the regulations.
Well, if you have to have a teaching degree for some of the ages, some of the breakdowns and stuff.
And that's money.
Well, and now we're offering free education for people that want to get their teaching license and work in a daycare. But the problem is they're going to make limited amount in a daycare. They might as well just go work at the school and make $5, $6, $7 an hour more once they get their teaching certificate. So once again, this is government putting its finger on the scale, screwing something up, and then now we got to try to find solutions.
Yeah. Well, this is really interesting. This is really neat because I've been hearing stories out of New York City about same kind of issue, like overregulation when it comes to rent. Okay, and they're bringing in people like with their immigration. They're just bringing them.
Yeah.
And so that right there, just the demand of extra people is causing the rent to go up just for living space. You can get, I think it's like $3,000 a month for a studio apartment or something, like a 1 bedroom, 1 bath, like studio. Everything's in one room. Ridiculous. And on top of that, they just in the past month, 2 months or so, said that every unit now has to have AC. So you have to install AC in the windows. So you have the cost of that, plus the cost of running it. So regulations, it just jacks the price up for everyone. And then they're trying to do price control. So more regulation.
Didn't Kamala Harris say something about that?
Yeah, price gouging, yep. For food. So even more important. Yeah.
And Ethan will hopefully find the link for this, but Freedom to Chains, Paul Harvey, 1965. Look it up and listen to it. It's 12 minutes long, and it talks about how every society goes through this. And he talks about the Greeks or the Romans, and overregulation ended up having a severe impact on their money, on their society, and how it functioned.
Yeah.
You know, well, actually, we've talked about Ibn Khaldun too, the Arab philosopher. He said at the end of the cycle on a society, bureaucracy and the educated elite, so to speak, put things in place which end up creating chaos in a society because they don't understand how it actually functions. And we end up reverting back into tribalism.
Yeah.
Starts with tribalism, goes through education, culture, high education, culture, and then we right back into tribalism because we follow the same pattern that's gone on. And
yeah.
Freedom to Chains is a good example. Listen to that when you get a chance. It should be required listening for everybody in the United States, I think.
We're good.
That's a simple thing.
We'll have it wrote up in the credits, and I'll try to get a link in there or something.
It's a good one.
Yeah, Freedom to Chains. And then who's the Arab guy? What's his name?
Ibn Khaldun.
Ibn Khaldun. That's gonna be tough to spell.
Yeah,
I'm gonna need to get spelling on that because
not even pronounce that.
Wasn't he the guy who said if you want to destroy society, make them addicted to like nudity, make nudity common in the younger people?
That was Saladin.
Oh, Saladin. Okay.
So there's another good quote. So every culture is watching this, has watched this, and said, your society is going to break down when these things happen. And here we are.
Worried about society breaking down, and we have overregulation, and we have nudity being very commonplace in society.
That's right.
Oh, that's rough.
It is.
You get all these.
The most frustrating part is we have all this knowledge.
Yeah.
And yet we're heading down the same path that so many cultures have gone down before.
And I got another quote. This one actually comes from St. Paul in the book of Romans, chapter 1. I don't know the verse, but I think it's because we have I'll get to the quote, but I think it's because we have all this knowledge, we think we're better than it. And the verse is, thinking themselves wise, they became fools. So we think we're so smart that we just forget. We just forget how dumb we really are. And I'm not trying to say that as like a mean way, but there are things we know and there are things we don't know. And if you're too arrogant, you kind of turn stupid sometimes.
Well, and I think that's what that Ibn Khaldun is talking about as well, where the people that put these things into place, then the intelligentsia, whatever you want to call it, creates a bureaucracy, creates problems because they don't understand the cause and effect. How many times have you seen a person and heard this quote? They're book smart, but they're not street smart.
All the time.
Okay. Are we going down that same road?
Well, no, because most people aren't even street smart with Google Maps. I'm serious. It's a thing. People aren't street smart no more. And actually, I think one of the best examples of the inverse of that, where you're street smart, knowledgeable of the world, but not so much on the books, was Charlemagne. Charlemagne actually instituted like the first nationwide education system. But anyway, well, to your statement about being book smart, people, again, it breeds arrogance. You get a degree in college in, let's just say, like teaching or gender studies, and you have this 4-year degree. You spent 4 years getting this piece of paper saying that you're smart, and you don't know anything. They don't teach things in college no more. Well, they teach Alinsky's rules for radicals. They teach Marx. You'll get some of your what you go in for.
Well, is it education or indoctrination?
It's a little bit of both.
Well, shouldn't it be more critical thinking?
Yeah.
I mean, we used to teach Latin, and now we have remedial English.
In college?
Well, I think it was required in college. Latin was.
Oh, yeah.
Because all your species, all your genus, plants and stuff, all have a Latin name for it. Yeah. So we've gone from teaching Latin in college to now you have to teach remedial English before they can even take the college classes.
Well, I think part of that's because literacy is down to what, 60%?
Oh, the state of Minnesota, our literacy is fallen. What do we went from? Wish I had the numbers here with me. From number 3 in the nation to 19 under Walz's leadership.
That sounds about right.
16,
but I think the literacy rate was like
50% and under.
Yeah.
So that, depending upon the school district, some of them the science and reading and other test scores. Yeah, it's kind of abysmal. Really.
Yeah, it's rough
when they're not at 50% of the students aren't proficient in math. That's a problem.
Yeah.
If you listen to Chris Ann Hall, I don't know if she's an interesting individual. She said the system is actually made to fit.
I believe that.
I'm trying to think. Wasn't it Dewey Decimal? The person who invented the decimal system. He has some interesting quotes, and I'm not going to say them now because I don't remember them exactly off the top of my head. But basically, the education system wasn't to educate people, but to make them basically
workers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mindless drones.
Mindless tools in the Industrial Revolution.
I can see that.
So here's the cause and effect of more government control.
Government control, which is interesting, and I think this might be the last topic we touch on today. For some reason, I decided to read the preamble to the Constitution. I was thinking about government control today a little bit.
Sure.
And, what is the government? What is our government? And what is it supposed to be? And I was like, let's go to our actual law book, like our code of laws, the Constitution. It says, "We, the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union, establish justice, ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity, do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America." Now, just the very start of that, it's not the government, it's not bureaucrats, it's not elected officials, it's we, the people. So when we think about that, and the way our government is designed to be run, we are actually part of the government as citizens of these United States. It's just an interesting little thought, I suppose. Because when they talk about how, like, the government should be allowed to do something or have guns, but the people can't, it's like, well, we kind of are the government, right?
Well, and it's part of the problem as we, the people, have elected people because of our type of government. We've elected people to represent us. And myself, as much as anybody else, we've kind of stepped back and not paid attention to what they've done. And now here we are where you have an influx of new people getting involved, saying government is not working for we, the people.
Okay.
And we need to get involved again. So that upswell of new people into politics, I think is a good thing.
We just got to bring them in the right way.
There's a lot of pushback with new people getting into government and into politics, but with any anytime there's a change in dynamics, it's going to cause some.
Yeah, when you upset the status quo.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We the people.
We the people. In order to form not a perfect union,
More perfect union.
because perfection does not exist. We can only strive for it.
Right.
Always trying to better ourselves.
And think of the people that wrote that.
Smarter than me.
Smart. Actually very young on
Very.
average.
Yeah, that bothers me because I'm getting old and I'm older than half of them. So I got a lot of work to do.
And what type of education did they have?
Not the kind that we're going through.
Not the type of public education that we are accustomed to now. Some of them were lawyers, some of them were business owners, some of them were farmers, merchants, a few other things, but most of them were very young. And they came up with an amazing form of government that we have squandered.
Yep.
And it's time for us, we the people, to take our government back. Expect some conflict, expect some differences of opinion, but it's time for us to take the government back.
Well, it's past.
Past time.
That's the thing that that's one of the things that bothers me about election. Like they're always like, it's time to finally do something. It's like it's been time to do something like 12 years ago.
Probably even longer than that.
Yeah.
But no, so people get out and vote. You know, this is huge. Know your candidates.
Yeah, do a Google search on them.
Call them up. Talk to
Call them.
Do your homework. Don't just vote because somebody's got a D or R behind their name. Ask them the questions. See where they stand on issues. And figure out if that's the best person.
See if their values are close to yours.
Right.
Back to values.
Values.
Got to stand up for our values, and we'll do a whole segment on that another time. I know I've been saying that for a long time, but we're working on it. It's on the list.
So I read an article over the weekend. I wish I would have brought that with. When you said values, that's what made me think about it too. Values versus virtues. It's a really interesting article.
We'll argue about that.
Yeah,
we'll get there.
We'll get there another time. We've got a couple guests that we got to get back on here. We had some audio issues one podcast, but we'll probably do that next week. And yeah, in the meantime, we're 40 some days away from the election.
Something like that, even less, because the time of recording is different than time of publishing.
Sure. So do your homework.
Only takes 30 minutes.
Yep.
Not even. You can look it up on your phone while you're pooping. Just saying, people do that. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching Pints and Politics. I haven't introduced myself. I'm Drew. Haven't introduced Mike either. Mike Weiner, State Legislator, Minnesota 5B. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless.